Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the surprisingly gripping, high-stakes science of home water disasters. It's a topic most of us pray we never have to learn about firsthand, right? But understanding the actual physics and chemistry behind it, that can literally save your home. We're going to be using some fascinating real-world data and mitigation protocols from Grand Water Damage Restoration down in Leeds, Alabama, to break down exactly what happens the second the water rushes in.
So let's set the scene here. Picture a typical sudden summer thunderstorm rolling through your neighborhood. The sky darkens, and in just a few short hours, boom, it dumps 2 to 4 inches of rain directly onto your property. Now, to a lot of us, 2 to 4 inches might sound like a relatively small amount of water. But in the right conditions, that turns a safe, completely dry home into an active disaster zone, practically overnight. It's incredibly fast, it's highly invasive, and honestly, it is unbelievably destructive.
To understand exactly how we fight back, we're going to map out the chronological disaster of a flood. We'll be looking at 1, a recipe for flooding, 2, the ticking damage clock, 3, categorizing the contamination, 4, the 3-step rescue, and finally, 5, paying for the damage.
Let's jump right into Section 1, a recipe for flooding, where we'll look at geographic and infrastructural vulnerabilities.
What's really fascinating here is how these vulnerabilities combine to create an absolute perfect storm. We're using Leeds, Alabama as our main case study, and just look at that second point. Dense clay soil. Instead of absorbing rainwater like a sponge, clay acts more like a ramp, pushing runoff directly into your home's foundation. Then you throw in winter freeze-thaw cycles that burst pipes hidden away in unheated cross spaces. Add to that the totally invisible threat of aging 1970s and 80s cast iron plumbing, secretly rusting out under concrete slabs, plus high summer humidity, we're talking above 70%, constantly overwhelming HVAC drain lines. So, it's never just one thing. It's this incredibly complex, interconnected web of risks. And when that pipe finally bursts or the creek overflows, the water doesn't just sit politely on the floor. It climbs. Drywall aggressively wicks moisture vertically, pulling water up to 24 inches above the floor line. It's literally acting like a giant thirsty sponge inside your walls. Meanwhile, your beautiful hardwood floors, they absorb that moisture and physically warp, cup, and crown. We're talking hundreds of gallons spreading through these materials while you're fast asleep, quietly compromising the very skeleton of your house.
Which brings us to Section 2, the ticking damage clock, and exactly why every single minute counts.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is this timeline. Just look at how incredibly tight these margins are. Professional restoration teams operate on a strict 60-minute emergency dispatch window. Why the rush? Well, because in just 24 to 48 hours, microscopic mold spores activate and begin colonizing damp organic materials. There's no stopping it once it starts. Catch it fast, and it still takes 3 to 7 days of intense, professional structural drying to halt the rot. And those hardwood floors we mentioned, they need a solid 10 to 14 days of stabilization to safely get their moisture content back to normal. Basically, every hour you wait to extract the water exponentially multiplies the damage. So to beat that clock, professionals have to see what you and I simply can't. Because water hides deep inside wall cavities and beneath subfloors, experts absolutely have to use thermal imaging to hunt down this invisible moisture. These specialized infrared cameras map out the exact spread of the water, zeroing in on hidden threats that a homeowner armed with just a mop and a bucket would completely miss. It's a pretty simple rule. If you can't map it, you definitely can't dry it.
All right, let's move along to Section 3, categorizing the contamination. We'll be looking at the strict IICRC S500 standard.
Now, this table perfectly demystifies the industry protocols. You've got 3 totally distinct classifications of water. Category 1 is clean water. Think a broken freshwater supply line or a burst pipe. For that, you really just need extraction and structural drying. Category 2 is gray water. Imagine an overflowing washing machine or dishwasher that contains soap and minor contaminants. That requires specific sanitizing treatments. But then there's Category 3. That is black water. This is highly dangerous stuff from raw sewage backups or muddy storm floodwater. It requires heavy antimicrobial treatment and honestly, often the complete physical removal of all the porous materials it touched because the bacterial threat is just way too high to risk it. And here is a genuinely terrifying fact about water chemistry that you absolutely need to take away from this explainer. Clean water doesn't stay clean. If a fresh supply line bursts, yeah, it starts off as Category 1. But the absolute second it touches your drywall, dirt, and insulation, it degrades into Category 2. And if you leave that water sitting in your house for just 48 hours, it actively mutates into toxic Category 3 black water.
the bacteria just explodes, turning a simple pipe burst into a literal biohazard situation. So, how do we fight back against that? That brings us to Section 4, the 3-step rescue, highlighting the scientific mitigation protocols.
This rescue mission relies on a strict, non-negotiable 3-step sequence. Step 1 is immediate assessment and deep water removal. We're talking powerful truck-mounted extraction pumps that can pull hundreds of gallons out of your carpets in a matter of minutes. Step 2 is intensely controlled structural drying, using commercial air movers and dehumidifiers to literally manipulate the environment of the room itself. And Step 3 is final verification and restoration. They use those moisture meters to definitively prove the structure is dry before any new drywall or paint can go up to get the home back to its pre-loss condition.
Now, to execute Step 2 perfectly, professionals rely on a fascinating scientific concept called green depression. It's a highly precise calculation technicians use to measure and remove water vapor from the air. They have to meticulously balance the room's temperature and humidity. Why? Well, if they run those massive industrial dehumidifiers, which, by the way, are pulling 10 to 15 gallons of water a day out of the air, and they drop the humidity too quickly, your walls will literally crack and your hardwood will split right open. But if they go too slow, mold grows. So calculating green depression ensures they hit that exact sweet spot of rapid yet completely safe drying. I love this side-by-side comparison because it proves exactly why DIY water cleanup is a total myth. On the left, we have the amateur approach, tossing some bath towels and a couple of box fans on a wet carpet, right? All that does is dry the surface. It leaves hundreds of gallons of water trapped down in the subfloor and wall cavities, which basically guarantees you'll be dealing with severe structural rot and toxic black mold just weeks later. Now look on the right at this certified professional approach, using moisture meters, mapping everything with thermal imaging, and creating a mathematically controlled drying environment that is meticulously verified by daily written logs. It's night and day. Finally, let's zoom out to the macro level for Section 5, paying for the damage, where we navigate insurance claims. Your financial survival after a flood hinges on one very exact distinction: sudden versus gradual damage. Homeowner policies generally cover sudden accidental catastrophes. So, if your water heater violently ruptures or a frozen pipe suddenly bursts in the wall, you're typically covered. But insurers will ruthlessly deny claims that are caused by gradual maintenance failures. If you had seepage from poor lot grading or a slow leak from a rusting plumbing line that you kind of just ignored for 6 months, that is considered predictable. And unfortunately, you will very likely be paying for that entire cleanup out of your own pocket. Now, if you do have a covered sudden event, you want to guarantee your claim moves through the approval process as fast as possible. And to do that, you must provide a very specific arsenal of documentation. Adjusters absolutely won't just take your word for it. They need pre-cleanup photographic evidence of all affected areas. They need initial moisture meter readings to prove exactly how far the water spread. They require daily logs tracking the temperature, humidity, and drying progress. And they want written verification that the mitigation met those strict IICRC moisture standards we talked about. Plus, itemized estimates formatted specifically for them. Professional mitigation companies generate this exact packet of data precisely because they know it's the only language insurance adjusters actually speak. Considering everything we've looked at today, how fast clean water mutates into a toxic hazard, how deeply water wicks right up into your drywall, and how shockingly fast microscopic molds can take over a property, you really have to ask yourself, what hidden vulnerabilities might be lurking in your own home right now? Is your home prepared for the hidden, ticking threat of the next major storm? Because knowing the science of mitigation, that is absolutely your first line of defense. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. And hey, stay dry out there.